Tessa, you're done here. Connor didn't even look at me when he said it. He smoothed his navy tie, leaned back in that leather chair like a king on a throne, and spoke to the room like I wasn't human. My security badge sat on the oak table between us, catching the fluorescent light. People stared at their laptops. Someone coughed into a sleeve. My mouth tasted like metal. He just fired me in front of everyone, mid-meeting, 10 minutes after I handed him my report. My fingers trembled against the table edge. He smiled that cold smile of his, the one that said he'd won. I pressed my palm flat against the wood to stop the shaking and said nothing. My mind raced. What exactly had I uncovered? The numbers in that report weren't just wrong, they were deliberately wrong. And now I was paying the price for noticing. Rage flared in my chest, hot and sharp, but I pushed it down. That's what Connor wanted, a scene he could use against me later. I blinked hard and focused on the wood grain running through the table. 1 breath. 2. 3. My chair scraped softly as I stood. I slid the badge toward him with 2 fingers. It made a tiny sound, like a coin dropping into an empty jar. His smile widened, victorious and smug. Around the table, people wouldn't meet my eyes. They all knew this was wrong, but nobody would say it. In my head, I made him a promise. Okay, Connor. Let's do this your way. Quietly. Thoroughly. Carefully. I'd spent 7 years building my reputation at this company. He thought firing me would make his problem disappear. He was wrong. I'm Tessa Ward, senior finance analyst, 34 years old, from suburban Ohio. I'm the kind of person who keeps budget binders for everything and loves spreadsheets more than most people love their pets. I don't gossip in break rooms. I don't slam doors when I'm angry. I track money because numbers tell stories when people won't. When I first saw those transfers 3 months ago, they didn't whisper, they screamed. Strange patterns in routine payments, amounts that didn't make sense, vendors I'd never heard of. I'd flagged them, documented them, tried to report them properly. And now I was the liability. The troublemaker. The person who asked too many questions. Connor thought he could erase me. He had no idea what I'd already set in motion. It started small. 2 invoices from a consulting vendor landed on my desk the same day. Both said strategy review. Both were round numbers, both just under the approval threshold that required dual sign-off. Alone, they looked harmless. Together, they looked suspicious. I scribbled a note in the margin. Why split these? My coffee cup left a ring on the paper, circling my question. There's something about those coffee stains. They mark what matters. The vendor name was generic. TechBridge Solutions LLC. I pulled up their payment history. 12 transactions over 6 months, all structured the same way. Small enough to fly under the radar. Big enough to add up. I started a file folder that night. Just facts. Dates, amounts, invoice numbers. Nothing dramatic. Just careful documentation of something that felt wrong. At Friday's operations meeting, Connor made a joke at my expense. Tessa gets nervous when numbers don't wear seatbelts, he said, laughing. The room erupted with polite laughter, that forced kind that happens when the boss makes a joke. I gave him my practiced smile, the one I keep for men who think belittling women is leadership. Under the table, my hand tightened around my pen until it left a crescent mark in my palm. The joke wasn't funny. It was a warning. Connor was telling everyone that my concerns were overreaction, that I was uptight and paranoid. He was building a narrative before I could challenge his authority. I kept smiling. But that night, I spread my notes across my apartment floor and started connecting dots. My living room floor became a map of sticky notes and printed invoices. I drew lines between dates, amounts, memo descriptions, and approval timestamps with a thin black marker. It looked like a conspiracy wall from a crime show. But patterns emerged. Every month, the same clusters of small payments. The approvals were often delegated from Connor to junior staff who wouldn't question him. The transfers happened one business day after Connor's private lunch meetings at the same expensive steakhouse downtown. It wasn't proof yet. It was rhythm. It was pattern. It was the shape of something deliberate and hidden. I photographed everything with my personal phone and backed it up to 3 different cloud services. Then I cleaned up the floor before bed, storing the papers in a box labeled tax documents in my closet. I decided to try the direct approach first. Maybe there was an innocent explanation. Maybe I was overthinking it. Connor, can you help me understand the recurring splits on vendor tech bridge? I asked one afternoon, keeping my voice casual and professional. He paused mid-email, blinked once, then gave me a smile with no warmth behind it. You're overcomplicating things, Tessa. That's handled. The air around him seemed to drop 10 degrees. He had a way of making the word overcomplicating sound like an insult, like I was too simple to understand big-picture business. I nodded and returned to my desk. The message was clear: stop asking questions. I didn't stop. I just got quieter. 2 days after I questioned him, HR sent me a performance counseling notice via email. The language was vague and corporate: communication style concerns, departmental disruption, collaboration opportunities. I'd had 7 clean years of excellent reviews. Now suddenly I was a problem. I signed the acknowledgement, received, not agreed, and filed it in a folder I labeled documentation. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I went home that night, baked banana bread at midnight while my thoughts spun, and underlined vendor names in my notes while the bread cooled on the counter. Connor was trying to build a paper trail against me. Fine. I'd build a better one. One based on facts and company policy, not feelings and retaliation. Things got worse. My meeting invitations bounced back as declined by organizer. Conference room bookings I made were mysteriously double-booked. Emails I sent seemed to disappear into black holes. A teammate named Marcus approached me by the copy machine one afternoon. His eyes were wide, his voice barely above a whisper. Be careful, Tessa. Connor's gunning for you. I tried to smile reassuringly. My stomach tightened like a knot. The hallways felt quieter now, emptier. When everyone avoids you, you hear your own heartbeat too clearly. But isolation had an advantage. Nobody was watching me closely anymore. They assumed I was already defeated. I used that time to document everything I was legally allowed to access. I had a choice. Fight now and look defensive, emotional, exactly what Connor wanted. Or play the long game and build something he couldn't dismiss. I chose strategy over emotion. At work, my desk became a museum of perfect compliance. Policy binders, audit trail templates, approval matrices, everything organized and visible. I followed every procedure exactly. I became boringly, perfectly, professionally correct. At home, I kept nothing. At work, I built a variance report the way company policy demanded: factual, neutral, properly sourced. No accusations. No theories. Just data with timestamps and system references. Legal. Boring. And absolutely lethal to anyone who'd broken the rules. I documented only what I had legitimate access to. Report drafts went into the shared control library with proper timestamps. I noted approver IDs, routing rules, policy clauses about split transactions requiring dual sign-off. I sent polite emails to the compliance inbox with neutral subject lines, recurring minor variance, requesting clarification. Each email was a breadcrumb I could point to later without touching anything I shouldn't. The beauty of working in finance? Everything creates a trail. Every approval leaves a digital fingerprint. Every delegation gets logged. Connor had been sloppy because he thought nobody would look. I was looking. And I was documenting my looking through proper channels. Breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Paula from accounts payable stopped by my cubicle one afternoon, chewing ice from a paper cup. Vendor Tech Bridge? That LLC's registered to someone with the same last name as Connor's old college buddy. Weird, right? The cup crinkled in her hand. My skin prickled with adrenaline. I kept my voice casual. Yeah, weird. That lunch hour, I pulled up the Secretary of State Business Registry. TechBridge Solutions LLC. Registered agent, Marcus Blake. The address was a mailbox store. I cross-referenced the name with Connor's old fraternity newsletter from the company's archives. Marcus Blake. Connor's roommate from college. My chest went cold. The pattern had just grown teeth. The next leadership meeting, Connor staged what I now recognize as a calculated humiliation. Tessa introduced an embarrassing reconciliation error yesterday, he announced casually, like he was commenting on the weather. Every head swiveled toward me. Heat crawled up my neck. The error he described wasn't mine, I'd caught it and corrected it. But perception matters more than truth in moments like these. I apologized calmly, taking responsibility I didn't deserve. Because Connor was writing a story, emotional woman can't handle numbers. I wouldn't give him ammunition. I'd give him nothing but professional composure. Later, I documented the incident in my personal records, noting the date and witnesses present. I started noticing small things. In a conference room with glass walls, I caught Connor's reflection and saw the wall calendar behind him. His golf outing was circled in thick marker. The date matched a transfer in my notes exactly. I didn't react. I simply noted it in my draft memo, transfer posted 1 business day after executive off-site event. No accusation. Just an observation of timing. These small details piled up like snowflakes before an avalanche. I sent what looked like a routine email. Flagging recurring pattern in vendor tech bridge transactions, amounts consistently below dual approval threshold. Requesting guidance per company policy 4.1 regarding split transaction procedures. I CC'd the compliance inbox as required by policy. It seemed like a courtesy. It was actually a floodlight. Connor couldn't ignore an email sent to compliance. And he couldn't make it disappear without raising more questions. The response came within 20 minutes. Victoria, the VP Connor had recently promoted, replied with 5 paragraphs of corporate nonsense. Thank you for your diligence, no need to over-engineer routine processes, leadership is fully aligned on vendor management. She used too many words to say one thing, stop looking. Then Connor forwarded Victoria's email to HR with a 1-line note I glimpsed later on a projector during a compliance review. We need to manage this situation. He forgot punctuation when he was angry. That detail would matter later. HR scheduled a random spot review of my files. 2 representatives arrived with pleasant smiles and clipboards. I offered them coffee and the comfortable chairs. My files were immaculate. Policies highlighted, variance memos saved with neutral titles, everything properly organized and labeled. One HR rep paused at my binder labeled, Reference, Policy 4.1, and tucked hair behind her ear. I appreciate your organization, she said quietly. There was a tremor in her voice, like she sensed a storm forming but couldn't see it yet. They left with nothing to criticize. My compliance was perfect. 3 weeks later, external auditors arrived for what the company called a routine mid-year review. Nobody believed it was routine. Connor stood in the lobby with clasped hands, telling them we were excited to showcase our control environment. In the elevator, one auditor, soft voice, sharp eyes, asked me quietly, if you were reviewing this company, where would you look? I lifted one shoulder carefully. Where the amounts are small enough to seem boring. She nodded. We both understood. Fraud doesn't announce itself. It hides in the tedious details nobody wants to examine. At night, I rehearsed potential questions out loud while folding laundry. Can you explain this variance? Yes. Transaction date, amount, approver, relevant policy citation. What was the intent? I can only speak to observable facts, not intentions. I practiced not apologizing for existing, not softening my knowledge, not making myself smaller. My reflection in the dark microwave door looked tired but steady. Connor started unraveling. In meetings, he snapped at people over nothing. He paced the conference room carpet like it owed him money. He asked strange questions. Who's been talking to compliance? Who reviewed the invoice files? He was hunting for leaks, seeing betrayal everywhere. Guilt makes people paranoid. Innocent people don't act like this. I stayed quiet, sipped my coffee, and updated my memo with 2 new screenshots and a carefully worded line. Split contract structure creates appearance of avoiding dual approval requirements. Appearance was a generous word. But I was building a legal case, not writing an accusation. Then Connor made his fatal mistake. He announced an emergency board meeting to clear the air and address false rumors. He invited me as the source of confusion, so I could explain myself to the board. He thought he was setting a trap for me. He'd actually built my stage. The calendar invitation arrived. I stared at it until my eyes burned, then I bought a navy blazer that still smelled like the store and ironed it carefully on a towel spread across my kitchen counter. I didn't sleep the night before. I built a presentation, 10 slides, pure facts. Transaction dates. Dollar amounts. Policy citations. Approval signatures. Timing patterns. Public business registry information. No opinions. No adjectives. Truth doesn't need decoration. At the bottom of slide 1, I added a single line, all data sourced from company systems, access permissions per policy. I closed my laptop at 2 in the morning and placed my hand on the cool aluminum lid like I was blessing it. Or maybe asking it to be enough. The boardroom was cold, that artificial conference room cold that makes water bead on glass pitchers. Directors settled into high-backed chairs, their faces familiar from proxy statements and company announcements. Connor opened with his magazine cover smile. "We've had an unfortunate misunderstanding," he said, glancing at me like I was a weather event he couldn't control. He used words like overzealous analysis and called me excessively meticulous, like precision was a character flaw. The board chair thanked him, then turned to me. "Ms. Ward, you prepared a variance report?" I stood. My voice came out lower and steadier than I expected. Slide 1, Vendor Tech Bridge, Payment Timeline. Slide 2, Transaction Amounts versus Dual Approval Threshold. Slide 3, Company Policy 4.1, Split Transaction Requirements. Slide 4, Approval Timestamp Analysis. Slide 5, LLC Registration Records, Public Information. Slide 6, Registered Address, Commercial Mailbox Service. Slide 7, Transaction Dates correlated with Executive Calendar. Slide 8, Delegation Pattern Analysis. Slide 9, Summary of Observable Facts. Slide 10, Data Table showing amount, date, approver, policy variance. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't look at Connor. The room went silent except for a laptop fan humming and someone's wedding ring tapping against glass. A director cleared his throat. "Mr. Blake, can you explain the business relationship between this vendor and your former college roommate?" Connor's mouth opened. Nothing came out. He swallowed hard. "This is being twisted." The chair's expression didn't change. "We'll examine it ourselves." Connor had called this meeting. He'd lit his own match. By that afternoon, a company-wide memo announced Connor was stepping aside pending independent investigation. Security escorted him down the same hallway where he'd humiliated me weeks earlier. He passed within 15 feet of my desk. His face looked hollow, disbelieving. Nobody clapped. Nobody even spoke. Victoria resigned, for family reasons, within 2 days. The auditors expanded their investigation. My inbox flooded with 2 kinds of messages: "Thank you for your courage," and "We'd like to discuss your future here." I went home, stood in my kitchen with my shoes still on, and let the silence wrap around me like a warm blanket. The board offered me a promotion, Director of Internal Controls. Better title, better salary, better office. I declined politely. I accepted a position at a small nonprofit that provides winter coats for kids who need them. My desk is a thrift store table that wobbles unless you slide a paperback under one leg. The numbers are smaller here, but they're honest. Every dollar goes where it's supposed to go. On a Tuesday morning, I took my grandmother to breakfast. She buttered her toast edge to edge and studied my face. "You look taller," she said. I laughed. Maybe I was. Here's what I learned in that boardroom: you don't have to be loud to be powerful. You don't need drama or revenge. You build your evidence, you know your worth, and you follow the process. I didn't destroy Connor Blake. His arrogance destroyed him. I just turned on the lights and let everyone see what was already there.